Alright, what's going on everyone? Today we're going to be upgrading a Magic Arena starter deck. We're going to be upgrading Grave Matters. If you want to upgrade a deck, highlight it, clone it. This is going to add a copy to your decks, like so. So we can click this, then we can click either here, or if you're in this view, we can click here and switch this over to standard, because alchemy is just no good. No fun. No fun. Alchemy, no fun. Alright, so here's the deck. What's this deck doing? It is a self-mill graveyard-based deck. We have ways to mill our own cards, like with Undead Butler, mills 3. Mulch, we have old Rutstein, who mills a card. We have Crawling Infestation, mills cards. And the goal is to get cards in our graveyard for stuff like this, which has power toughness equal to number of creatures. This has power and toughness equal to card types. Old Stick Fingers also has power and toughness equal to number of creatures in graveyard. This also gets pumped. So we're trying to fill our graveyard and then reap the benefits. The big issue is there's also this really weird Sacrifice Matters package, which I actually think is not very good. It is kind of good, just not in this deck. I'm talking about things like Doom Dissenter, Fell Stinger sacrifices, Gravelighter sacrifices. These are fine. I think the idea is like we can get insects from this and insects from this and then sacrifice them. But then like Doom Dissenter isn't necessary, and I don't know, that whole package just seems weird. It seems like it's watering the deck down a little bit too much, to the point where it doesn't always do what it wants to do, because sometimes it's sacrificing but it's not milling enough, and sometimes it's milling but then drawing the sacrifice stuff. So I think we just kind of not focus too much on this and focus more on milling our graveyard, milling our deck into our graveyard, and then reaping the benefits of that. So how do we do that? First, I think we need to take out 3 of these Gravelighters. I like this card, by the way. Gravelighter is pretty cool, but I think we could take out 3 of them for 3 Crawling Infestations. This is going to be very important going forward, and we'll talk more about it, but the idea is at the beginning of our upkeep, we mill 2 cards, and then whenever a creature goes into our graveyard from anywhere, we make a 1/1. So if we mill a creature, we get a 1/1 insect, but also if a creature just dies, we get a 1/1 insect. Anything going to our graveyard is going to make a 1/1 insect once per turn, and that's going to be very useful. We'll talk about that a little bit more. We need to set this up a little bit, but first off, let's just say we're going to be making a bunch of insects. So now that we can mill so much, we have a good payoff for that right here. So I think we need more of these. So let's take out 2 of these Doom Dissenters, because these aren't exceptional. They're fine, but they're whatever. So take out 2 of these, add 2 Reclusive Taxidermist. So this is a 2 mana 1/2 and it taps 4 mana. That's going to be relevant. And then if we have 4 or more creature cards in our graveyard, it becomes a 4/4 for 2. So if we draw this in the late game with creatures in our graveyard, 4 of them, it's just a 2 mana 4/4 that taps for mana. That's great. And it's also just great on turn 2. Turn 2, get a 1/2, can block like 1/1 aggro creatures, but also taps for mana, ramps us into our next card, because we're going to take out 2 Eaten Alives. This is fine. It's a fine card. It's a removal spell, but we have a win condition engine going on here. We're going to take out 2 of these, and we'll add 2 Hounds. So the idea here, when it enters, it mills 3. Then whenever a creature dies or a creature card is put into a graveyard, each opponent loses 1 life. Now, important note, it doesn't say 1 or more creatures. So if 4 creatures get put into the graveyard at once, they lose 4 life, not just 1. And this doesn't trigger once per turn. And another important note here is it says whenever a creature card is put into a graveyard, not your graveyard. So any creature going into any graveyard for any reason is going to make the opponent lose 1. Now we have Taxidermist to ramp into this faster, so that's cool. And we have Crawling Infestation. Every single time we hit creatures with these, not only do we get a 1/1 insect, but we're going to drain 1. So this is our new like win condition. We don't even need to attack with this deck. Our goal is to get a Dreadhound onto the battlefield and then just drain the opponent out by having creatures entering the graveyard constantly. So I absolutely want 4 of these, and I think we can make room for it by taking out 1 of these Bloodsworn Squires. These are fine, but they're also kind of clunky. We need to discard something. It could take a couple turns to set up. You know, it's a 4 mana 3/3 to turn we play it, which is not great. And, it's fine. Once we flip it, it's really good. But it's not always easy to flip. And, I don't know, I just find it a little bit clunky. And this Dreadhound is our new win condition. We will absolutely win many games with just a Dreadhound sitting on the battlefield and then milling our own deck into our graveyard and just draining the opponent's life. That's the idea now. Because remember, we also have stuff like this that mills, right? This mills 3. This, we reveal top 4, we put the lands, all the creatures go into our graveyard. That's going to trigger here. We're going to have old stick fingers, right? So we have lots of ways to mill our deck into our graveyard and just drain. Drain. That's the idea. So we're milling so much that I want more stuff in the graveyard that likes being in the graveyard, like a Tenacious Underdog. This card seems off theme, but the power of this is when we mill it, it's like a free card from the graveyard because we can cast it from the graveyard. So there's another card, we can't cast it so much, but there is a Bramble Worm. So this is, it's first off, it works pretty well in this deck because we do have the ramp, so we can sometimes just cast it. But the cool thing is, if we mill over it, we can exile it and gain 5 life. And that could be pretty important against like aggro decks and stuff. So I like having just like 1 copy in, and I think we could take out 1 Fell Stinger for one of these. So basically we just have this card that we're usually going to mill over it and then just exile it and gain 5. Do note that we don't want to exile it until absolutely necessary, because we do have lots of cards that get more powerful with more creatures we have in the graveyard, like old stick fingers, ghoul callers, harvest. We don't want to go below 4 if it's like our 4th creature. We have stuff like this, right? So ideally we don't just exile it for no reason, but if we're like on the brink of death against an aggro deck, it's 3 mana, gain 5, which can keep us alive. So it's just nice to have a single copy that we're usually going to mill over, and it's like an emergency life gain possibility sitting in our graveyard if we need it. Next, I think we could take out 1 swamp, because I think we have too many lands. A lot of our stuff is pretty low, and we have lots of ways to gain, find more land. So we're going to take out a land for a mulch, which I'm fine with this because mulch finds us more lands. So if we draw this instead of the swamp, it's going to get us more lands anyway. Reveals the top 4, lands go into our hand, the rest go into our graveyard. So all the creatures trigger Dreadhound, gives us land so we don't have to worry about those. It's just really nice. So we're pretty good right now on a budget, I think. We're much more sort of focused. The big issue I have with this deck now that we can fix with rares is I just want more of these 2 cards. These 2 cards are great in this deck. So what we could do, I think we could take out Shigeki. This is a cool card. It's played in some decks, and it's okay in this deck because we can return a bunch of stuff from our graveyard to our hand, and we are filling our graveyard. So I think it's pretty good. It's very expensive, but I think it's fine. But I just think that taking this out for old stick fingers, old stick fingers is great. So if you don't know how this card works, first off, you don't have to pay X for it. You can just pay 2. And it has power and toughness equal to the number of creatures in our graveyard. So, same thing as this. It just automatically has the power and toughness equal to our creature count in our graveyard. But then we can pay X, and we can put a bunch of creatures in our graveyard. Like, say we pay 4 for it. We pay 2 and 2. So it's going to reveal cards off the top until we reveal 2 creatures, and then put those in the graveyard. So it's guaranteed to have 2 extra power. So if we pay, if we pay 5 for X, it's guaranteed to add 5 more creatures. And that's relevant because let's say it's in the late game and we pay let's say we pay 6 for this. So we pay 4 and 2. So we get 4 creatures. Not only is that going to make it even bigger, it's also going to trigger Dreadhound, right? So this kind of becomes an X damage spell. Like, the more we pay for it, not only is it going to be bigger and bigger, but it's also going to drain more and more life. And it's going to drain, if we have 2 Dreadhounds and we pay 4 for this, the 2 Dreadhounds are going to drain for 8, right? So that's pretty cool. Old Stick Fingers and Dreadhound. Dreadhound synergizes so well with all of these creatures. It works really well. So I'm a big fan of it. And I also think we could take out 1 Gloom Shrieker. I think this card's very good. It does return a permanent from our graveyard to our hand. I think that's relevant, but I think we could take out 1 for old Rutstain or Rutstein or Rutstein. He just mills, and then we get all kinds of advantages from the type of card we mill. Mill a creature, get a 1/1 insect. mill a land, get a treasure, mill anything else, we get a blood token. And that is the finished deck. The only thing I'm unhappy with, I would say, is probably, I'm not the biggest fan of either of these cards. This card's pretty cool. The problem is we don't have a ton of card types, really. We don't have an artifact in the deck. I don't even know, we have sorcery. Do we have an instant? We do have one instant. But it's usually not as big as I would like. And also, I think this can just go straight into an old stick fingers. Like, why try so hard to flip it when we can just have old stick fingers for 2 and it does the same thing? The only downside of stick fingers is it is legendary, so that's one big problem. I would also probably like another mulch. Mulch is great. Maybe you could cut another land for another mulch. I'm a little bit iffy on that, but mulch is awesome, so more of those would be good. I also think Fell Stinger is a little awkward. The benefit of Fell Stinger is it can sacrifice the insect tokens, so it's not terrible. I wouldn't say this is like the best, but it's it's fine. Like, both of these cards work in the deck, but they're not like super exceptional. But yeah, those are just some thoughts. Overall, I'm pretty happy with how this deck performs now. Oh, you could also upgrade the mana base. I keep forgetting about that, but yeah, you can replace Jungle Hollows with Deathcap Glades, which are a little bit better. Also, look forward to more dual lands and Dominaria United. But overall, pretty happy with this deck. It is pretty fun to play. Typically, it's the type of deck that you're not attacking your opponent too much. You're usually just sitting back and draining the opponent out, and just your opponent can't do anything about it. But yeah, hopefully that's helpful. Deck list in the description if you want to just import it. Makes it easier. There's also a playlist with all of these upgrade guides. We have 9 done. We have 1 more to do. 1 more, so almost done with all of these. So there's an upgrade guide for every deck if you want to check those out. So hopefully those are helpful. But in the meantime, thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one.